What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down what's going on with the overall market and how this may affect Tesla's share price, and also what the shorts are doing right now to Tesla that could affect us for next week and even for the next couple of weeks. Now, before I break anything down about what's going on with Tesla's short interest, before I talk about what's going on with the overall market and how it may affect Tesla, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 7 free stocks plus free level 2 data. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 3 weeks. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Tesla was up 0.3% for the day, gaining some relative strength compared to the market, and Tesla was due for a bit of a bounce, a bit of a rebound, at least to some degree. However, looking at the way the market is looking, it is very likely that we do have some more downside to come very, very soon. But the real question is, will the market just straight up crash from here, or could the market bounce first and then end up seeing more downside? I'm going to actually give you more insights about that in this video. To start us off, we actually had Joe Biden speaking today, and he actually said that he's very optimistic that CPI next week will be in solid shape. So could it mean that he knows something? Could he be lying? I don't truly know what's going to happen next week with CPI, but I do see this as a possibility because of the fact that Joe Biden would have a lot of egg on his face if CPI ends up being very, very hot. So there is a chance he knows something and he could be saying this by mistake. He could be lying. He may not be. I just want to at least take this into consideration. Now, when it comes to the fear and greed index, the market is very fearful right now. People are beginning to capitulate. They're starting to panic because there's all this news about the banks collapsing. There's all this news about, the crash coming, the big recession, and this and that. And it's really shifting sentiment in favor of the bears. That's part of why the market is performing the way it is, leading to a big domino effect of selling. When it comes to SPY, I just want to note to everyone that for the week, we don't have too many crazy options expirations for the week, except for next Friday. We actually have quadruple witching coming out, and there are lots and lots of options. We have over 6 million of them in total. I think it's actually like 5 million, over 5 million of them in total, with a very high puts to call ratio. This makes me think there's a chance the market makers may try to play lots of games tomorrow. And I think next week, by Thursday and Friday, the market's going to be going ballistic because of not just quadruple witching, but also because of the 0 day to expirations options. And this leads to a lot more volatility in the stock market. I mean, if you look at today, the volatility was crazy. I will break that down in just a couple of minutes, though. But first, I want to talk about something else that's very important. That's the jobs numbers that just came out. The jobs numbers were not great overall. We actually saw a lot of non-farm payrolls, even higher than what the forecast was. But the unemployment rate did actually go up just a little bit. So it was kind of mixed, a little bit more bad than good, though, because of the fact that the jobs market is still very strong. 3.6% unemployment is still very, very low, and we are still seeing lots of jobs being created. Now, for the month of March, this has actually changed to some degree. I'm really hoping that this change does continue. But until then, if the numbers keep remaining this high, it's going to be negative for the stock market. Jerome Powell also said that the Fed is going to be looking at these numbers, and this could actually increase the odds of them being even more hawkish than before. So please be ready for that. As far as Tesla goes, I have lots of news to cover for Tesla. This did come out a couple of days ago. Tesla is facing a lawsuit to the autopilot and FSD safety claims. They're basically stating that, Tesla's not doing the best of job at informing people about how safe their autopilot actually is with the full self-driving technologies. This was filed in San Francisco, of course, and this is actually a class action lawsuit. This is why Tesla was underperforming over the last couple of days. I actually briefly mentioned that before, but I wanted to go into more details about it. Now, for the overall market, the market is still panicking right now because big banks, the top 20 biggest banks in America, are each having their own difficulties. Specifically, Silicon Valley Bank, which actually collapsed very recently. And this is the biggest collapse since 2008 for any bank in America. So this is very, very important right now because a lot of the big banks are seeing unrealized losses at over $692 billion or somewhere around there. And we're continuing to see banks being hit again and again and again by the high interest rates. On top of that, lots of banks were lending money to new IPOs, which aren't even doing as well. So it's really, really leading to this massive mess between the lenders and those who are involved. So now the FDIC is actually taking over a lot of these banks. They're auditing them, they're looking into them, and it's just becoming a massive, massive mess. And this is actually hurting the banking sector, across the entire USA. Even like JP Morgan is taking big hits. It's just an absolute mess. This is contributing to the why the market is slowing down the way it is. Now, as far as Tesla goes, fundamentally, we do have some good news that came out. It's been noted that Tesla is the second most popular auto brand in all of California for the year 2022. Once again, very awesome news. You have to consider the fact that Toyota is not just an EV company, they also have gas powered cars, and Tesla is still actually catching up to them in terms of production and other factors. But as I mentioned before, Tesla is becoming increasingly popular, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla does end up overtaking Toyota as years go on. On top of that, I want to note that being the number two best selling auto brand in California is a big deal. The Tesla model, I think this is actually I'm sorry, it's down here. We have the Tesla Model Y. There was a chart right here that showed it. It was actually the one of the top selling cars in California. We also saw a big increase in the amount of buying near the end of the year, specifically in California. And we're continuing to see the Model 3 becoming more popular too. So the Model Y was actually one of the top selling SUVs in California. And for the cars, it's the Model 3. I do apologize if these are small. I just want to quickly get through this just to let you guys know that Teslas are still very, very popular. Looking at some inventory levels real quick, I just want to note that the Model Y, it's continuing to be bought up like crazy. We still have very low inventories, so demand is not looking like it's a big problem for Tesla. They're just continuing to get lots of sales, which tells me that earnings for next week, even though the margins may be adjusted to some degree because of price cuts, overall, as far as like deliveries go, I do think Tesla could still have some very hot numbers. Now, Tesla also mentioned not too long ago that they're opening their Supercharger network across the entire EV sector. This is actually going to benefit the company as a whole by giving them more exposure and helping to expand the overall fast charging networks across the USA. You can see right here, this is Tesla's fast charging stations. This is going to be like other stations combined. And when you actually put them all together, it's going to become even bigger for people all over the world. This also incentivizes people to buy Teslas because more and more people are going to learn about the brand and they're going to have more access to the charging stations over time because more Tesla charging stations are going to be coming out. And as they do improve and open the doors to different EVs out there, this just opens the eyes of so many different investors, so many different people that are buying into EVs. So, in my opinion, it's actually another good piece of news for Tesla. It's going to generate a lot more money for them, and it's going to continue to help them grow fundamentally. Being an energy storage company is big for the company. We also saw some new headlines coming out about the Tesla Cybertruck. The size of it actually may have been revealed. This is not 100% confirmed as of right now, but I do believe that having more data about it is very interesting. I think there's a chart somewhere down here that actually gives us some very good estimates of the dimensions. So if you compare it to the F-150 Raptor, they have very similar sized wheelbases. The overall length is actually almost the same, with the Cybertruck being a little bit shorter if it does have those 35-inch tires. If you look at the width without the mirrors, it's actually a tiny bit thinner, just a little bit, and the overall height really depends on air suspension. But overall, it has a longer bed technically, and also the width is just a little bit thinner, but overall it's a very similar size overall, and I think it's very, very nice. It's a very fantastic car, and I really believe that this is going to be a winner for Tesla because you have to remember the power of Tesla's brand. They're already getting so many orders for this. It's going to be a hit regardless, and I think it's going to be very, very cool. On top of that, we had some good news that came out just, I think this was like yesterday, also parts of earlier this week. Tesla's showing some big improvements to deliveries in China. So we're actually seeing big demand continuing to increase over there. That's once again a good sign. because of the fact that in China right now, we're actually seeing increases in the amount that people are saving money. And on top of that, a lot of people that are investing into different companies are slowing down in China. People are slowing down their investments over there. China is also slowing down in total because of the lockdowns and also because of geopolitical issues, thus slowing down demand here as well. And we're also starting to see as demand is just shifting in a completely different direction, there were a lot of talks of this having a negative effect on Tesla. But Tesla prevailed by cutting prices, and we're actually seeing them giving us good numbers despite all of the setbacks. So we actually exported about 40,479 cars in February. Once again, a 3.24% improvement over the 39,000 exported from January. So once again, another improvement that just continued, and we're continuing to see domestic sales as well doing very, very well. They were listed at 26,000, I think, in January, and we actually saw a 26% improvement for the month of February. So once again, Tesla's doing very, very well. The wholesale right over here is relatively high, and the Model Ys were doing very well too. Now, going into the technical side of things, Tesla had high volume, lots of buying pressure after we got some good numbers, and also because of the fact that Tesla was due for a technical rebound. I also think that to some degree, we did see some shorts cover, but I do want to note that there was a big increase in Tesla's short interest. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. The overall short volume is actually down just a little bit, especially today. So we did see an increase in buying pressure to some degree. Now, what else is worth noting for Tesla is the options chain is pretty crazy for next week. We actually have a relatively low put to call ratio, which means the majority of investors have calls for Tesla for next week, for next Friday. And the thing about this is we have 1.1 million calls out of the money. It makes me wonder, is Tesla really just going to crash from here with the market, or could Tesla get a bit of a rebound, right? If I was actually buying a lot of these calls, if I was a big institution, I would work very hard to pump Tesla up to get lots of these calls in the money. Now, this can all depend on CPI and etc. But as far as like technicals go, it is a little bit more likely that they might try to push Tesla by the end of next week. Once again, we have to wait on some data first, but it is a real possibility. On top of that, if you look at Tesla's short interest, we had about 18 million Tesla shares shorted just a couple of days ago. This increased to about 24 plus million. So more than 6 million Tesla shares were shorted. We did see some short covering as it did decrease to about 21 million, but overall, that's still very high compared to where it was before. Just a couple of weeks ago, this thing was at about 16 million. So the overall short interest almost doubled during some periods, especially after Investor Day. And once again, we're starting to see more shorts piling in than before. What this tells me is I don't think that the majority of the shorts are just buying them for 1 week. I think lots of them could be hedging and simultaneously shorting Tesla for many months out because they are anticipating some downside. All right. So there might be some downside to come for Tesla overall over the next couple of months. And this is partly not just because of a shorting that's going on, but also because of the overall market and also because of manipulation. You have to remember those different factors for Tesla and the entire stock market. Now, going into the technicals, I'm going to make this part very short. I want to mention to everyone that Tesla has a very important zone between this 168 to 166 zone. If Tesla comes down to this area, we have been seeing some buyers defending it, but if we break below 166 to 168, that whole like zone, Tesla's going to fall all the way down to 160. It is very possible because that's where our gap happens to be, but I'm not really counting on it as confidently as many people have been because of the fact that Joe Biden said inflation is going to be, or he's very confident that inflation is going to actually come down. We're going to get some good numbers for next week. He might just know something. So it also makes the perfect trap for a lot of shorts who are just piling into Tesla during times like these to actually try to squeeze this thing up next week. It's a possibility. I'm not counting on it. I'm not guaranteeing it. I have to see the data first to be more confident, but it's a real possibility, right? There's also a possibility Tesla comes all the way down to fill the gap in like the 160 zone, and then we try to bounce after that. It's a real possibility. But if we do end up getting some kind of bounce, right? If the market does like get a small technical bounce, I'm not counting on it to be too massive. Let's just say the market does end up coming down, Tesla does like drop down on Monday, then we get a bounce off like CPI. Hypothetically, right? Tesla could bounce, sure. Maybe Tesla gets back to the higher 170s, maybe it tries to go for the 180s. But the bottom line is when you start to really zoom out of these charts, we look really distributive over here, and this does look like a distribution Wyckoff schematic overall. And what that means is institutions were pumping Tesla up very, very high. They were letting this thing run all the way up to 220. They started shorting this thing way up here, and now we're actually following the different schematic, which means Tesla will most likely continue to curl. See how it's like curling like this overall. Now, this doesn't have to be a perfect curl. You could see on the way up, Tesla had these pushes up, it came down a little, pushed up, came down, pushed up, came down, right? We could make moves like that in a way where we come down, push up, come down. We may try to push up a little more, get a small bounce. Maybe it's a pretty decent sized bounce. Then we continue ultimately to fill this gap. And I do have a target of 140 for Tesla. I think eventually it's going to get there over the next couple of months, unfortunately, because this is a massive gap. And we're also seeing fundamentals starting to align with the price action in the stock market. The stock market is not very fundamentally strong right now. The Fed is continuing to raise rates. The banks are starting to collapse. Inflation may be ticking up again, and most likely should be. Really depends on what happens in the data coming out next week. And we're also seeing lots of big geopolitical issues which are affecting supply chains in the US. We're actually seeing supply maybe not keeping up with demand as much as it has in the past. So all of these different factors are really coming together and they're leading to more recessionary fears. And I believe that the real effects of the rate hikes are starting to show as banks are beginning to struggle big time. The banks have been announcing more dividends at a much faster rate than before because they need shareholders. They need liquidity during hard times like this. This means the banks know they're in for trouble. They know the economy is going to struggle. They know it all. And they're very, very cautious right now. They're on the edge right now. So I really want the best for everyone. Just like what Jerome Powell was forced to say earlier, unemployment is going to likely increase big time over the next couple of months, going into next year. There's going to be a lot of pain, okay? But you have to be prepared for it. You have to be ready. So as shorts are piling in, I know Tesla could drop a little bit. It could try to rebound a little later, get a small rebound over the next few weeks, but over the next few months for the medium term, the shorts are anticipating Tesla's going to start tanking. We're seeing millions of shorts being entered into Tesla. They believe Tesla's going to tank and they're going to do whatever they can to make it happen. So I'm warning you in advance. I'm not saying this is going to happen tomorrow or next week, but going into the next few months, there's going to most likely be lots of negative news cycles for Tesla and also for the overall market, for fundamentals. And there's going to be a big shift in the market as we're seeing lots of sentiment changing. All right. So eventually, even if this thing bounces, we're likely going to see Tesla continue to fall, unfortunately. And this is going to be a very good buying opportunity once again because fundamentally it's a strong company. But you have to be prepared for this and do not panic when you start to see moves like this in the markets. That's what I have for this video. I want everyone to be prepared. Please remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.